thing about a real badass is that they never try to fit in, but rather up to this saying,
No sequel for you.
so the TV Regent is going to show you exactly what it means. That's right, today we're doing Volume 2 of the top 25 most badass movie flexes.
If you're looking for another rent boy, they're on the corner of Smith Street.
Manners maketh man. Do you know what that means? Then let me teach you a lesson.
When you think of a badass, it's very rare that you'll have the image of an extremely British man who's well past what you'd call middle age. Well, Harry Hart from the first Kingsman movie is as badass as they get, especially if you look at the sequences he's been a part of. I've obviously mentioned the church scenes multiple times, but the whole manners maketh man bit he does with Eggsy's bullies is top-notch stuff.
I've had a rather emotional day, so whatever your beef with Eggsy is, and I'm sure it's well-founded.
The fact that he was able to go from gentleman to Mortal Kombat mode and then back to gentleman in the space of 3 business minutes was simply incredible. Even Eggsy couldn't help but be mesmerized by Colin Firth's fighting skills. Also, he rightly mentions from the start it really was kind of him to show such manners throughout the whole process. The man even said, "Excuse me."
Excuse me.
Yes, he went to lock the doors before giving those punks a thorough beating. If I have to mention one highlight, it's got to be when Harry unleashes his rather unique shield when one of the boys starts shooting at him. Bro brought a gun to an umbrella fight and lost. I guess it's true when they say that you should fear the old man in a profession where they usually die young.
Amateurs seek the sun, get eaten. Power stays in the shadow.
You know how we keep on talking about how awesome Robert Downey Jr. is as Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, but he shouldn't really be restricted to just one role no matter how legendary or iconic it might be. Take his performance as Lewis Strauss in Oppenheimer as an example. Bro totally nailed it, and I'm not surprised at all by all the awards he's been winning for this role. Now, when it comes to the scene, I'm sure you must be wondering how such a character can even flex without pulling a muscle, but Strauss wins us over with a simple line. It's such an impactful moment, and he really shows us what it means to have the kind of experience he does. I honestly agree with the line because it's a fact that newbies get eaten up by their own ambitions most of the time.
Robert built that damn place. He was founder, mayor, sheriff, all rolled into one.
However, the smart ones know how to keep themselves hidden until the moment is right. The reason why Strauss totally owns the Senate aid is because they're exactly representatives of the flex.
He'd do it all over. Why? Because it made him the most important man who ever lived.
Lewis Strauss, however, was the real power because he's kept himself in the shadows. At this point, we should just make Robert Downey Jr. play Batman as well. He already has experience of playing one eccentric billionaire. I'm pretty sure he won't have a problem playing another.
It's not good he's telling everyone you initiated the hearings.
You can't prove a goddamn thing. You certainly can't prove that I gave the file to Borden.
We're not in court, sir. There's no burden of proof.
There's no trial. Without a trial.
You'll be my slave. Since you'll be my dog, your new name will be Spud. Welcome to slavery.
No thanks. I already had a wife.
Being in love is cool and all, but nothing can ever beat the kind of experience that marriage can give you. Just take a look at Seth Gecko from 1996's From Dawn Till Dusk. Bro was so familiar with the concept of a wife that he used it as a flex against a freaking vampire. Of course, if I had Salma Hayek ordering me to become her slave, then I wouldn't really have any problems with it.
I want you to have a drink with me. I insist.
Just look at Quentin Tarantino. Bro literally wrote himself into this scene just so he could have his way with Salma's feet. Now, the name Santanico Pandemonium is pretty heavy in itself, which explains why she was able to survive the massive shootout that happened right before this moment.
How many?
3.
However, George Clooney ain't the type to give in to monster ladies, so he manages to take her down, although I feel he had a bit of plot armor here. The vampire saw him raising his gun at her. Did she really think he wasn't going to shoot? Also, every time I watch this scene, I wonder if Bro was talking about his real-life wife at the time, because there was absolutely no mention of him being married in this movie.
Why are you so agitated?
I'm still stewing about that ape laying his hand on me.
What are you gonna do?
Go.
We need to do what he says, all right?
What?
It's the best thing. What are we gonna do? Shoot our way out of this? Okay, just put the gun in the bag. Give him the bag and give him everything. Come on.
Slide the bag over.
Yes. You just gave me a ring, mother.
Oh, shit.
Sandra Bullock is a pretty versatile actress, and her filmography is a testament to that statement. Whether it's suspense thrillers like Speed or emotional dramas like Gravity, she's done it all.
Baby formula. Yeah, cartel's been smuggling cocaine and baby formula for years.
Of course, there are also comedies like Miss Congeniality, but the one I want to focus on over here is 2013's The Heat. Yeah, this one's pretty much been forgotten over the years, but it was a commercial hit at the time. I think it's got a few solid scenes. One of them is when Sarah and Shannon drop a special gift at the warehouse for Larkin and his goons. The random nature of the explosion is what really gets me, because it's sudden, and even Sarah's line caught everyone off guard.
Guess you and her are engaged now, huh?
What? Well, 'cause...
I mean, she's talking about getting engaged, so, however, it was a sneaky trap. That's why her line towards the end makes the whole scene even more memorable. She wasn't lying either. She did get a ring out of it, although it's the kind that can blow up warehouses. She even gives them the finger right before the explosion, so that's like a double violation in my opinion.
Would you mind holding this for me? Oh, okay. Let me help you.
Jesus.
Thanks.
No sequel for you.
If Arnold Schwarzenegger is the lead of your movie, you can bet your bottom dollar that he'll decide whether you make an appearance in the sequel. In the case of Benedict, he was given the no-go with an awesome flex by Jack Slater.
Gee, did you make a movie mistake? You forgot to reload the damn gun.
No, Jack. I just left one chamber empty.
Charles Dance really had the same kind of vibe even before his days as Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones. You can see the cold, villainous passion in his eyes all the way back in 1993 as well. So I feel kind of bad that he's not had the chance to flex his acting skills in as many big budget productions as he would have hoped for. Anyway, Benedict turned out to be a truly menacing antagonist, and the final showdown between him and Jack was a pretty impressive way to end the film. Of course, you've got the typical trope where the hero's injured and he's about to meet his end, but then a last-minute effort from a side character allows him to regain the upper hand and then end his opponent. However, when Arnie says, "No sequel for you,"
No sequel for you.
it just feels so badass that I couldn't keep it away from this list. Man,
Bad guys can win.
I'd even go as far as to say that Benedict was amongst Arnold's greatest villains, right up there with the Predator and the T-1000.
Permanently. They're calling it a cure.
Well, that's ridiculous. You can't cure being a mutant.
Well, scientifically speaking,
Since when did we become a disease? How can anybody in their right...
they're announcing it now.
Kelsey Grammer is a notable actor with loads of achievements and successes to his name, so to have him play the Beast in the Fox version of the X-Men was a pretty solid move. I mean, he definitely pulled it off, and I personally prefer his version to Nicholas Holt's, probably because both characters are of different age groups. However, when it comes to Wolverine, he doesn't like to discriminate between people, so he mocks the Beast right as he sees him for the first time. This is a brutal mutant with unbelievable strength and skills that would make him even more dangerous than a lion or a tiger. Yet the first words that come to Logan's mind when he notices his appearance is to call him a furball. Bro even had a response ready when Beast called him an animal, but in this case, I'd say he only set himself up for an extended violation.
Henry, this is Logan. He's Wolverine. I hear you're quite an animal.
Look who's talking.
Like, I don't want to be mean or anything, but you should really look at yourself in the mirror before you go around calling other people animals. The Wolverine sure knew how to get on his nerves, which is why he's often referred to as the most badass mutant in the world. Can't wait to see what he does in Deadpool 3.
$2 million in unmarked bills, just like you wanted. But this is as close as you'll ever get to it. You'll never see $1 of this money, because no ransom will ever be paid for my son. Instead, I'm offering this money as a reward on your head. Dead or alive, it doesn't matter.
Mel Gibson was one of the biggest stars on the planet during his prime, so much so that almost everyone knew his name. So if you're going to kidnap his son, then you need to be prepared for the consequences. This scene from 1996's Ransom is so savage and badass that I'm sure a lot of potential kidnappers would have just abandoned any plans they had in mind to make a quick few bucks.
The whole world now knows my son, Sean Mullen, was kidnapped.
For a billionaire like Tom Mullen, I'm sure a couple of $1 million wouldn't even dent his bank account, but he knew that it wasn't about the money and rather about the principle.
You'll never see $1 of this money, because no ransom will ever be paid for my son.
That's why his whole speech on national television was the most sudden and badass Uno reverse card that mankind has ever seen, at least back in the 90s. The calm nature with which he flaunts all his cash and taunts the kidnappers by saying this is the closest they'll ever get to his ransom was truly epic, and I also love how he turns the tables by offering the same amount as a reward.
I'm offering this money as a reward on your head.
For getting rid of the people who snatched Shawn. I can actually see shades of this scene in the Tony Stark speech in Iron Man 3, where he gives his address to the fake Mandarin. Maybe it's a billionaire thing.
Sit.
After this, we'll see if you break eggs again.
John Brill!
I like the way you die, boy.
I just spoke about one Uno reverse, so here I am with another example, although it's a little bit more direct. Django Unchained is another solid effort from Quentin Tarantino, but it doesn't really get as much recognition as Pulp Fiction or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that doesn't really seem fair.
That doesn't seem fair.
Well, the TV Regent is all about justice, so here's a satisfying moment where Django shows white people what it's like to be on the receiving end of the bargain. The way he makes his entrance is memorable in its own right, and just look at how he says, "I like the way you die, boy."
I like the way you die, boy.
Now that's an iconic line to give your victim right before he falls dead to the ground. Oh yeah, and that whipping he gave to the other dude was pretty brutal, but very much needed. Bro came in looking like Austin Powers, but pulled off a save that would even make James Bond proud. Just take a moment and realize that at this point in time, Django is the freshest black man in the world. I also like the shot where little Jodie looks in the mirror and only sees the fancy suit, with the face not revealed yet. At that moment, Django represented an idea that transcended any form of race or skin color, and that's vengeance.
The world's on fire. And you think all's forgiven?
I'm not looking for forgiveness. And I'm way past asking permission.
Normally, you'd associate Captain America with the idea of complete morality and obedience, but it's often led to the misunderstanding that he's just a blind follower. This scene from Infinity War proved that Steve Rogers was more than capable of his own thought processes.
Earth just lost her best defender. So we're here to fight.
Of course, we did get to see how he was willing to go against his own people in Civil War, but it was his speech to Ross that made me respect him even more. Bro wasn't keen on forgiveness, and he didn't even bother to ask for permission either.
And if you want to stand in our way, we'll fight you too.
This was great character development, and it proved that Captain America would be a grade A badass if he wanted to be. I also like how he mentions that Earth just lost their best defender. Even though he had his differences with Tony Stark, Steve still had respect for him, which proved his intentions. I mean, I'm not exactly used to seeing him flex as much as the others like Thor and Iron Man.
Right where I didn't want you to be. This isn't Coney Island, this isn't field trip, this is a one-way ticket.
But he did come through when it really mattered. I also liked how he instantly dismissed Ross because he didn't have the time to play nice. Man, why don't we get more of this in the earlier Captain America films?
You're obviously the big but you've got your parties muddled up. Just a dose that'll make you wish you were born a woman.
British films have a whole other level to their comedy, especially if we're looking at the works of Guy Ritchie. One such example is 2000's Snatch. It's awesome enough to have guys like Jason Statham, Benicio del Toro and Brad Pitt in the same film, but I want to talk about Vinnie Jones, who plays Bullet Tooth Tony. That name wasn't just a random decision, as can be seen here with a trio of fools who try to intimidate him with a bunch of replica guns.
The fact that you've got replica written down the side of your gun.
Bro knew they were bluffing the moment he grabbed an arm, and that followed with a classy threat and a lot of talk about balls. Sure, it was hilarious, but the speech is what makes this whole scene work. However, Bro actually explains why he's telling them to buzz off, elevating it to a whole new level. If you think about it, he was actually being very polite here. You've got three dudes pointing a gun at you, and the worst thing you're doing is comparing them to balls, even though you've got your own lethal weapon. It's pretty kind if you ask me.
The fact that I've got Desert Eagle .50.
Do you have a gun, I hope?
Have a nice. Goodbye, Mr. Burton. It's all in the reflexes.
Imagine being a cocky truck driver who likes to crack questionable jokes all the time, and you end up getting caught in an ancient battle between good and evil only because you decided to make a delivery to Chinatown in San Francisco. Yep, that's exactly what happens with Kurt Russell's Jack Burton, but the dude was definitely up to the task. Take the final battle, for example. You got Lopan trying to mock Jack for not being able to master his knife skills, but ended up getting killed because bro had badass reflexes. Even Gracie couldn't believe how useful her lover boy could be if he actually applied himself, but his response to the whole thing was still pretty modest in my opinion. I mean, sure, he's wearing lipstick while in the middle of a very important battle, but as long as he gets the job done, I don't think we should be questioning his methods. I also can't believe that John Carpenter directed such a comedic film. This is the same man who's given us Halloween and The Thing. Oh yeah, I also want to mention how hilarious it was to see thunder exploding seeing after what happened to Lopan.
I did lure hundreds of spider people away from your little clubhouse. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
If you've got the guts to stand up to Miguel O'Hara and come out on top, then you're already an S-tier Spider-Man. Miles Morales has never really had to push himself to the extent where he actually chooses his own way over anyone else, but in this case, I'm going to side with him because his line is pretty awesome. Bro decided to shove the universe aside and do his own thing, so more power to him.
I'm about to do this.
The amazing part is while Spider-Man 2099 may have questionable methods, his reasoning isn't wrong. If the Spider-Verse relies on certain fixed events occurring to remain stable, then those events shouldn't be prevented. As difficult as it is for Spider-Man to accept that certain sacrifices must occur for his universe to keep existing, it's kind of like what Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. On the other hand, Mars is right that being Spider-Man means doing whatever you can to save as many people as possible. The risk of acting shouldn't prevent one from doing the right thing. So it's not a matter of moral superiority, it comes down to a desperate man trying his hardest to keep everything together versus a desperate man trying his hardest to do the right thing.
Everywhere you go, you're an anomaly. You're the original anomaly.
Yeah? You've just been erased.
For a guy who's played one of the cheesiest villains of all time in Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger sure has some iconic lines to boast of. A severely underrated flex is from the film Eraser, where he plays John Kruger, a man who's built an entire career by erasing the records of witnesses and giving them new lives.
Makes you a murderer.
DeGuerin and his men have escaped the hands of the law, but they didn't escape John's as they got sabotaged by the limo driver. Of course, it was Johnny Castiglione in disguise, and with Mr. Eraser present right in front of DeGuerin, he had the chance to say the film's most iconic line.
Businessman. Very serious businessman.
Now, there isn't any fighting or physical dominance on display, so it does feel odd for an Arnold entry, but even then, it was the perfect setup with a very satisfying payoff. As a matter of fact, you could say that this was Arnold's last true hit, save for Terminator 3 maybe. There's also the part where Kruger tells Lee that DeGuerin and co caught a train. Okay, now that may have been pretty cringy, but at least it has some context.
Just been erased.
Stansfield. At your service.
This is from Matilda.
Don't mess with Jean Reno. The man is the ultimate Giga Chad, and that's why he kicks off my top 10. Leon the Professional had set such high standards that films like The Equalizer and John Wick could be termed as successors to it. Now, we all know how badass Leon is, but the final sequence where he blows up with Stansfield was probably the most prominent flex I've seen while the flexer is dying. Of course, seeing Leon deliver his final line was amazing, but I also love seeing the simple little things of that era that never really stood out before. You know, stuff like cars, fashion, the street, or even how the sun just seemed to shine brighter. Guess the older I get, the more I miss the 90s, so nostalgia is all that I can bank on. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Gary Oldman actually gets blown up twice during the 90s era. Once this scene, and the others in 1997's The Fifth Element.
You stay there for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Let me put the mask back on. I breathe better with it.
Like shipwrecked men turning to seawater from uncontrollable thirst. You could watch me torture an entire city. And then when you truly understood the depth of your failure, we will destroy Gotham, and Gotham is ashes. And then you have my permission to die.
Say what you will about Bane's character arc, the man still made us all panic when he took down Batman with such ease during their first encounter. I know I've mentioned this moment tons of times before, along with the "I was born in the darkness" line.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it.
But when you do something as iconic as denying the Dark Knight his permission to die, then it has to be acknowledged. Bruce Wayne just kept taking one L after the other, and it goes to show why Bane's strength and intimidation shouldn't be taken lightly, even though he might be a simp. Just think about it. Bane not only thrashes the daylight out of Batman, but he also tells him he's going to keep him alive till he burns his city to ashes. It may not be coming from a hero, but it is still a flex, so I have to honor my own rules.
Oh, your buddy!
The Corleone family is thinking of giving up all its interest in the olive oil business, settling out here. Tom?
Hey, Mike, are you sure about that? Mo loves the business. He never said nothing to me about selling.
Yeah, well, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse.
Don Corleone is the most gangster who ever lived in the history of gangsters. 1972's The Godfather changed the mafia genre forever, and it boils down to a lot of things. There's amazing direction from Francis Ford Coppola, there are some amazing performances from the likes of Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, and there's also the writing, which gave us some timeless dialogues. When you hear the phrase, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse."
Tom?
Hey, Mike, are you sure about that? Mo loves the business. He never said nothing to me about selling.
Yeah, well, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse.
You already know where it's come from and what the reference is. It doesn't matter if you've seen this film or not, although I'll be seriously judging you if you haven't. This line showcases confidence of a whole other level, which is why it makes sense for it to have been spoken by a legacy character from a legacy film. I would have actually called it a legacy series, but then I remembered Godfather 3 exists.
The Corleone family bankrolled your casino because the Molinari family on the coast guaranteed his safety. Now, we're talking business. Let's talk business.
Yeah, let's talk business.
Ever notice how you come across somebody once in a while that you shouldn't have?
Crazy, man. Get out of here. You put a finger out. Oh, shit. Now, hey, Pops.
I'll name you one legendary actor, his name is Clint Eastwood. Now I'll name you one legendary director, and his name also happens to be Clint Eastwood. This man is 93 years old and he's still living up to his reputation of being an all-rounder in Hollywood language. When it comes to flexes, I can probably make a whole video by just using scenes from the Dollars trilogy, but I've got to be fair to his other films, especially 2008's Gran Torino. Walt Kowalski is as badass as they come, and the man doesn't let his age get in the way as he saves Sue from a bunch of bullies who clearly were going to let their intrusive thoughts take over. It's one thing to have the confidence to face off against such men, and another to flex on them with a line more iconic than the entirety of the filmography in the 2010s decade.
Take care now.
And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
One thing you don't want to do is piss off Jules Winfield, otherwise you'll have to be the victim of one of cinema's finest monologues ever. Brett happened to be on the receiving end of Samuel L. Jackson's wrath because bro couldn't stop saying the word "what?"
What does Marcellus Wallace look like? What?
I love when Jules asks Brett if he reads the Bible, and then you can see Vince in the back put out his cigarette and roll his eyes like, okay, here we go with the Ezekiel 25:17 thing again. Bro knew that was going to happen and got prepared for a pretty brutal conclusion to an otherwise holy session. Any other actor would have probably made this scene a little less intense, but Samuel L. Jackson knows better than to let us down in terms of energy.
Does he look like a bitch?
You don't step aside, we'll tear you apart.
Your friends might get me in a rush, but not before I make your head into a canoe. You understand me?
Back it up now!
Now here's a film that Gen Z kids won't ever be able to recognize. That's because TikTok and Instagram never cover cult hits from the older days. Anyway, Kurt Russell makes it to the party with a threat that sure as heck ain't a bluff, as his target rightly points out when the others try to play it down. See, that's the thing about a flex. Even your opponents know how serious you are. Bro's got a gun to a man's head while surrounded by men with guns. He knows he can't kill them all, but he can kill this one guy before they gun him down. Now, that's one hell of a flex. Wyatt's expressions and lack of hesitation served as perfect indicators of his mood and the aura that he presents around himself while confronting the mob. Honestly, it's the acting that earns this entry such a high spot. Kurt Russell does a brilliant job in this film, but I also want to shout out Val Kilmer, who was pretty solid as Colonel John.
I'm pretty famous too. Ain't that right? That's right.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you.
That's it! You're locked in here with me!
Rorschach, is he insane? Yes. Do we like him anyway? Hell yeah. This has got to be the greatest line from all comic book adaptations because it presents such a dark aura and intense impact that you could almost feel Rorschach in front of you saying the same thing. Taking down the inmate with frying oil was savage enough, but then bro decided to remind everyone that they were the ones locked up in here with him. He even takes one to the face by one of the guards, but it does nothing to him at all. I also like how Rorschach always uses his environment to attack his opponents. Like, he's not super buff or anything, he's just very brutal and calculated. Bro's more Batman than Batman could ever be.
You killed my dogs, man! You think I had something to do with that girl?
Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video I know you're going to enjoy.